You know, there's a difference between being hawkish and being stupid.
So Mehdi Hasan just pulled off one of the most devastating political interviews of the year, exposing how Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is completely isolated from his own caucus on Israel policy. We're talking about 40 Democrats revolting against their own leadership. This is explosive stuff.
The president's actions have made us more, not less, vulnerable.
There was a war powers vote in the Senate, which would have reined Trump in on Iran. It failed in the Senate this week.
You know, there's a difference between being hawkish and being stupid. There's no one who understands what it is the president is doing, what he hopes to achieve, and how he's going to achieve it.
Trump's February 2026 Iran bombing was the most reckless foreign policy decision in decades. The connection is clear. American weapons flowing to Israel enabled Netanyahu to drag us into this wider war. Zero strategy, just gut instincts and Israeli pressure.
Senator Schumer is not the leader when it comes to where the Democratic Party is on what's going on with Israel, in Lebanon, in Iran.
This is unprecedented. A sitting Democratic senator essentially declaring that the Senate Majority Leader isn't actually leading on the party's biggest foreign policy issue. That's not criticism, that's a leadership crisis in real time.
We should not have started that war.
Well said.
And the reality is that we see that the president started this war. It was unilateral, didn't explain his reasons or his objectives, and used the overwhelming military power of the Air Force to bomb. And it did a lot of damage. But then, as we've seen before, the asymmetric response comes. And now Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz and is inflicting enormous economic damage on the United States and, of course, the Western world.
The Strait of Hormuz carries 21% of global petroleum liquids. Iran shutting it down is economic warfare on steroids. This is exactly what asymmetric warfare looks like. Hit the superpower where it hurts most, the wallet.
But the president's actions have made us more, not less, vulnerable. And that's why it's very hard for me to answer what would I be negotiating. I mean, the right negotiation for us is to be doing everything we can.
Exactly right. Trump's bombing put America in the weakest negotiating position possible. You can't bomb your way to the negotiating table, then act surprised when the other side has all the leverage. Classic imperial overreach.
So that's Chuck Schumer last year, egging Trump on to be more hawkish on Iran, saying we shouldn't have any side deals and he needs to be tough in public. That's the kind of rhetoric some people, and you know this, people in your party would say, people in your base would say, that's the kind of democratic hawkishness that emboldens a Trump and emboldens the Republican Party.
You know, there's a difference between being hawkish and being stupid.
So Mehdi Hasan just pulled off one of the most devastating political interviews of the year, exposing how Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is completely isolated from his own caucus on Israel policy. We're talking about 40 Democrats revolting against their own leadership. This is explosive stuff.
I voted just last night against transferring weapons to Israel.
How did Chuck Schumer vote last night?
And he voted for it. We disagree.
How many people voted against the weapons?
7 in the Democratic Party.
40 of your colleagues. You and 39 of your colleagues voted to block weapons.
That's correct.
And 7 Democrats, including the leader of your caucus, voted against it.
The math is devastating. 40 Democrats against weapons transfers, only 7 supporting Schumer. That's 85% of the caucus rejecting their leader's position. In parliamentary systems, Schumer would already be gone.
How can he lead a caucus if he's in a minority of 7, Senator Welch?
Well, I don't want to turn this into a discussion about what Chuck Schumer...
I'm just wondering. We don't have to turn it into a discussion. It's a simple question. How does he lead a caucus if 6 people are on his side and 40 of you are against him? I don't understand the math.
He loses some votes. What an understatement. When 85% of your caucus votes against you on a defining issue, that's not losing votes, that's losing legitimacy. The mathematical impossibility of Schumer's position couldn't be clearer.
Senator Schumer is not the leader when it comes to where the Democratic Party is on what's going on with Israel, in Lebanon, in Iran. And the war is extremely unpopular. And many of my colleagues who were with Senator Schumer on their position just a year ago are now listening to their constituents who do not like this war, who think that it is making us less secure, and do not want to have Benjamin Netanyahu essentially dictating policy. And And that's where the focus is. And I think Senator Schumer is going to realize that.
The Iran war and Gaza are the same conflict in Democratic voters' minds, both driven by Netanyahu's agenda using American weapons. Constituents see the connection even when leadership pretends these are separate issues.
Trump did something astonishing. When he was making a decision about whether to commit us to war, he invited the leader of another country, Benjamin Netanyahu, into the Situation Room. And Netanyahu gave him assurances that if we bomb, then the Ayatollahs will collapse and there'll be regime change. If we bombed, he asserted, the Strait of Hormuz would stay open. Even with President Trump's own intelligence people saying that's farcical, Trump went ahead based on his, quote, gut.
Unprecedented doesn't cover it. A foreign leader in the Situation Room advising on American war decisions? Netanyahu promised regime change and open straits, both lies. Trump ignored his own intelligence agencies for Netanyahu's fantasies.
That is totally and utterly irresponsible for a leader of a country, in this case Trump,
yes,
to basically kowtow to the leader of another country when their agenda is totally different than what our needs are. So the American people get that.
Israel wants regional war to eliminate threats. America wants stability and cheap oil. These interests directly conflict, yet our foreign policy serves theirs. Democratic voters understand this contradiction even when leaders don't.
I think what's led to it is the absolute horror that we saw with 70,000 civilians, many children, women, all the hospitals in Gaza getting just destroyed with our bombs. And we're seeing that now in Lebanon. You know, last night, one of the issues was, do we send bulldozers, armed bulldozers, whose job it is, they'll be used to just literally destroy villages, not a home here and there. And that's appalling. That's in Lebanon. So I think that people are coming to terms with the reality that the Netanyahu agenda, that his use of violence that's indiscriminate is not something we can be associated with and have our arms be the ones that are used.
The visual impact of American-made bulldozers destroying Lebanese villages breaks through decades of pro-Israel messaging. When voters see "Made in USA" stamped on weapons killing civilians, abstract policy becomes personal moral choice.
I think the reason that the AIPAC money is so toxic right now is AIPAC is not advocating a position so much as its position is to advocate for whatever the Netanyahu government wants. In one of the seminal experiences I had, my first trip to Israel, I was newly elected in Congress, and when we were debating things, there was an assertion that if you were taking or asking questions about the pro-AIPAC position, you were being anti-Israel. When I went to Israel, there was fierce debates. Should we stay in Gaza? Should we occupy Lebanon? Should we be for or against a two-state solution? So I saw at that time in Israel vigorous debate, which was being denied here. So AIPAC, I think, has just made itself an arm of whatever the official Israeli position is.
Brilliant point. AIPAC stifles debates that happen freely in Israel itself. Israeli politicians argue about Gaza occupation, while AIPAC demands American politicians support whatever Netanyahu wants. It's more hawkish than Israel.
I'm worried about it. I mean, number one on ICE, one of the conditions that we've been negotiating about ICE is that they not go to places like churches and polling places. And the Republicans won't agree to us on that. Second, on the SAVE Act, the whole point of the president, he's still denying that he lost the 2020 election. All right? He is pardoned all the people on January 6th who violently attacked police officers. Yes. He's saying that the election should be nationalized. The SAVE Act would allow Homeland Security to basically get access to voter information in all of our states. And then they'd be in a position to, quote, purge or cleanse, as they would put it, voter rolls. So you would be giving, it would have been Kristi Noem. That is the person that would have been in charge, and now Homeland Security with her successor. So what is that about? There's no indication of fraud at all, but there's an assertion of it, and there's a drumbeat that the president is pursuing. And his means of being in a position to totally interfere with the election is the SAVE Act.
The connection between foreign war and domestic authoritarianism is textbook. Crisis abroad provides perfect cover for undermining democracy at home. The SAVE Act isn't about election security. It's about giving Homeland Security control over voter rolls.